Yeah, that I mean, since everyone is on mute, I don't think you'll be able to respond. If you can just type.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, fine. First of all, sorry for the delay, guys. It was scheduled for Thursday, and due to some unavoidable circumstances, we had to move it to a Monday. But yeah, I'll start the session. Okay, my name is Mayur Bhandarkar. I'm currently a senior technical specialist at Incido Incorporated in Pune. I have close to 12 years of experience in content writing, instructional design, and technical writing. And I have close to 6 years of experience in data and CMS. So let me not delay and let me start. So today's topic is information architecture. We'll look at the classical information architecture and some contemporary additions to that. So let's begin with our session. Okay, so this is a image that I got from Google. This talks about what information architecture, the classical information architecture is all about, where it has 4 components. It has classification and hierarchy, labels and tagging, navigation and wayfinding, and search. So how I've organized this session is, any component of information architecture that I would be talking about, I'll use an example and I'll show you how it's done. So we will be looking at a documentation perspective, not the actual classical information architecture, as to how information architecture can be implemented in our documentation. So this is what we are going to look at. Just give me a couple of seconds. There are some comments. I just want to see if anyone is facing any problems. Okay, you need to swap the display. We are seeing the presenter's view. Okay, I guess this view doesn't work. I hope this view works. Okay, guys, let's move ahead. Okay. Okay, the agenda would be just a 3-point agenda. We'll begin with an introduction. Then we'll move on to the components of classical information architecture. And then we'll move on to the contemporary information architecture.
Mayur, I think you stopped sharing. Your screen is not coming anymore.
Yeah, the thing is, when I was sharing it, they had a presenter's view display. Exist minimize. Wait a minute. Share screen, desktop, share screen. Is it visible now?
Yeah, now it's coming fine.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Okay, let me go about the agenda again. So it's just a 3-point agenda. We have an introduction where I'll just introduce what information architecture is all about. And then we'll look at classical components of information architecture. And then finally, we'll look at the contemporary components of information architecture. I would request people to ask any query, post their questions or ask any queries after completion of each component. That way it will be easy rather than taking it all the way to the end. Okay, so let's move ahead. Okay, in the introduction, we'll just cover basic definitions and we'll just look at who's the founder of information architecture. I'll just read out the basic definitions because it's just some fancy words together. So I'm not going to give my spin on it. So I'll just read it out for you. It's a blueprint. Information architecture is a blueprint and navigational aid to the content of information-rich systems. Then we have another alternative definition, which says information architecture is the conceptual framework surrounding information, providing context, awareness of location, and sustainable structure. So the guy that you're looking on in the screen is the founder or the granddaddy of information architecture, and his name is Richard Saul Wurman. And along with information architecture, he's now also one of the key founders for TED Talks. If you've watched TED Talks, and also he's one of the key members. He was the one who set up these TED Talk sessions and all. Okay, so that's about with the definitions and founder. So let's move on with the classical information architecture. So as we saw in the first image, the classical information architecture comprises of 4 components, which starts with organization, labeling, navigation, and search. So these are the 4 components we'll be looking at, and we'll use an example, a third-party software. We'll use that as an example and see how we can perform classical information architecture on our documentation. A word, just an FYI for all of you, classical information architecture is basically implemented even before the documentation starts. So these components can be implemented even without writing a single word, even without writing anything related to the features that you're documenting. So you can just have these implemented even before you start the core documentation for your product or the project that you're working on. So let's move with organization. As I said, I'll be using the example of a third-party software. The software that I'll be using is Quick Heal PC Tuner 3.0. So I'll use this software and we will implement all the components of classical architecture. So let's assume that this software is the functional specs or the requirements document or the what do you call, any kind of artifacts that you get even before the start of your project. So we'll assume this to be the artifacts that we have to do our documentation and implement information architecture. So let's start with organization. So organization is basically setting up the foundation or the structure of content deliverables. So it's usually the TOC of the project, wherein you will be listing out all the features that you will be documenting and the list of topics that will document that list of topics that you will be documenting per feature. And the structure can be provided using, as I said, the reference materials like functional specifications, UI wireframes, or other resources. In our case today, we'll be looking at the software, as I mentioned, will be PC Tuner. We'll use that software as a reference and we'll implement organization, which is basically the first step before you start your documentation, where you give a skeletal structure as to how your document is going to look. So over here, you see that I have highlighted four features from a menu called tools. So we will now organize these 4 features. Let's assume that you are updating this document, and you will be adding these 4 features as part of this release. So let's take that as the assumption and do the organization activity. So this is how it looks. Now everything in green are the ones that we are going to add in this release. So the orange is something which already existed. So let's assume PC Tuner was the software and it already had dashboard, tune up, reports, restore, and about. All these things already existed in a previous release. And in this new release, you're going to add a new menu called tools, which has 4 features: duplicate file finder, secure delete, startup booster, and service optimizer. If you look at this, these are the 4 features that we'll be doing. So this is how it fits within the structure. And if you look at it, when we take these tools, we now move ahead and we further classify as to what all we are going to document within the features of tools. Like, let's look at duplicate file finder. You have UI elements and a UI elements topic and a procedure topic. The same goes for all the 4 features that we are going to document. So why are we doing it this way? So you can say that this is a concept of data that we are using, wherein the duplicate file finder feature will indicate that we cover the overview over here, and the UI elements topic. In this topic, we'll cover all the UI elements that are part of that feature, and finally a procedure topic as to how to use duplicate file finder. Now this entire structure is going to be replicated to each of the features that we are going to document. So if you look at it, it's consistent for all the 4 features. So this again builds up a specific structure for how the tools menu will be documented. Then we move on. Now this particular screen, if I've brought it up, like in case you realize that a particular topic needs one more additional any particular feature requires one more topic that needs to be added apart from what you have assumed will be covered, then in that case you can introduce that within your structure. Now if you look at that, this particular feature had an additional sub feature within it called select secure delete options. So if you feel that this is something which needs to be documented separately, you can introduce that within the organization within secure delete. If you look at it, types of deletion topic, you have introduced that. So this one will get one more topic as opposed to others which has the common 2 topics each, one for concept, one for reference, and one for procedure. So this, we now add one more thing, one more additional topic to our organization. So basically what we are trying to show over here, that your organization should be flexible at the right at the beginning, so that if there are introduction of any new topics, it doesn't feel like the organization of your topics is has gone haywire. So it has to be structured in such a way that any new topic that gets introduced should feel that the flow for that particular feature is right. Okay, so now we have introduced a new topic and we have added that to our organization. So now let us look at the list again. So basically that was a diagrammatical representation. So when you note down all these topics, you will just make a note of it somewhere. So this is how it will look like. You will have 4 features and there 4 topics, and there are two topics for each one. And as for this one, secure delete, it has one more additional topic that we introduced. So we are through with organization. At this stage, if you see, we have not given a proper title to it, because at this stage you just want placeholders to know that there are these topics that are going to be introduced for concept, task, and reference, and then we'll add the labeling at the next stage, which becomes the next component of our information architecture. So any doubts at this stage? If someone has any doubts, they can go ahead and ask, because we'll be moving to the next component. Okay. Next, let us move on to, I'm sorry. Okay, let's move on to labeling. So random topic titles which we had over there are changed to appropriate topic titles. And at this stage, we label every topic based on what its functionality is. So when you do a labeling, when you give a proper title to your topics, you need to understand what the feature is and what its functionality is all about. And your title should basically define what exactly is the type of information that he's going to get within that particular topic. And title should also convey what you can achieve using the feature. Okay, so now let's look at the example. This one is going to move pretty quickly. So you see at the titles at organizing stage, which we had given, were duplicate file finder and all of these over here. Now what we have done is we have given now we have used this and we have changed it to an appropriate title because now we've understood what now we have gone ahead and explored these features, and we have understood what these topics are all about. So we give it an appropriate title. So this is what the labeling stage does. So instead of duplicate file finder, we have an overview of duplicate file finder. Instead of duplicate file finder UI elements, we have user interface elements of duplicate file finder. And finally, duplicate file finder procedure, or how to removing duplicate files using the duplicate file finder feature. So we give an appropriate title so that the topic title itself gives an indication as to what the topic contains. So we finish the labeling for all the 4 features of the product that we were documenting. So this completes the labeling aspect. And now we move on to navigation. Since I don't think anyone will have any question on labeling, we'll move on to navigation. Okay, navigation.
Mayur,
Yes.
there's a question from Kiran. I don't think that's anything about the leveling. The question, she's asking what is the difference between information architecture and content strategy?
Content strategy, I think, see, as far as classical information architecture goes, these are the 4 basic things that you have to do before you start creating your content. These are some things which have to be established even before the first word is written. Content strategy is basically delivery of content, is basically getting you have to decide how and what kind of things that you want to deliver as part of your content deliverable. I think the contemporary part which I will be covering will align more towards content strategy as to how you want to deliver it. So we'll look at that once we complete the classical aspects of it. So that will have that will deal with things like image manipulation and content reuse and all that. So
okay,
once we move on to that part, I think we'll be able to answer that.
All right, sure.
Okay. So navigation. Now navigation is moving from one place to another and getting back. So it is absolutely essential for a person to know how to navigate through the software. So you have to actually have an idea as to how the flow of the documentation is going to go, and where all you're going to provide links. So basically navigation is not just an hyperlink. It is knowing where the user might move next, and the navigation components include adding related links, prerequisites, post requisites, and getting your breadcrumbs and all those things. So let's look at it from an example point of view. Okay, so let us look at the breadcrumbs. Now home is the home page, or the main where the control is passed back to the main page. So from there you move on to tools. Like in this case, an overview of duplicate file finder, you have home tools. So this is how we have built the breadcrumbs. Clicking on each one of these will take you to the next topic. So we have built a breadcrumbs. In today's day and age, most of the breadcrumbs are auto generated by the software. So this is not something that you need to worry about. But in case your authoring tool or the software that you use to create documentation is not doing that, then it's a good practice for web help at least to have breadcrumbs to assist in the navigation. Yeah, the TOC will also help, but breadcrumbs is something which gives more weightage when we look at the next part of the component. It adds more weightage to the documentation that you have done. Okay, so similarly, if you look at it, we have added breadcrumbs for all of the topics that were created. So each one will have their own, these are navigational aids to move from one place to another. Next, we add related links, like which topic is related to the other. Now, this might seem a bit, okay, I think there's some question. Is procedure result part of the navigation too? If not, where does it fit in? Okay. See, a procedure result, I'll get back to that question later. Just give me a moment. Okay, now this is a bit slow. I don't know why. Okay, we are through with breadcrumbs, and now we move on to related links. Now with related links, if you look at this, we have added 1, 2, and 3, and we've in related links I have mentioned 2 and 3, which means the related topics for duplicate file finder will be user interface and this one, the removing duplicates. So we have to build our related links right at the beginning to show which are the related topics for a particular feature. So this also can be done right at the beginning, even without adding content to your topics. So this is just these numbers are just an indication as to which topic is getting linked to which other topic. So if it is 1 and if it says 2, 3, 4, so these 3 are the related topics. So now you've built your breadcrumbs, you've also built your related links. And finally, prerequisites. Prerequisites are usually needed for some task topics, like let's assume we have removing duplicate file finders, duplicate files using duplicate file finder. So in this case, if you structure your content in such a way wherein you have a concept and you have wherein you next you have a reference topic which talks about all the user interface elements, and the third one is a procedure, then it would be a good idea to give a prerequisite for a task topic. It would be a good idea to give a prerequisite of the user interface elements, because in the task topic we will not be defining any of the user interface elements. We'll just mention that this is what you are supposed to do, and these are the user interface elements. But if someone wants to know what those user interface elements actually do and what their descriptions are, it will be covered in the user interface elements of duplicate file finder feature in the reference topic, and we should just give the reference topic as a prerequisite for the procedure that you're documenting. Okay, the same has been followed. If you look at this, the same has been followed for all the other features. Just an additional topic over here is deleting permanent files, because of there are 2 procedures over here. So we have just linked link the same topic twice for these 2. Okay, so after prerequisites, we move on to post-requisites. Since this particular example did not require any post-requisites, we have not added any over here. So what basically post-requisite means is, if there is a extremely long step which is supposed to be done in 3 to 4 sub-steps, then in post-requisite you need to mention what is it that you need to do after performing this particular procedure. So that those things you need to add as a hyperlink in the post-requisite section of your content. So since this example did not have any, so I have skipped it. Okay, and finally the last classical component of information architecture is search. Now search basically involves adding metadata to your content. And the basic metadata, see, now that I've mentioned that information architecture, the classical components of it is done at the very the classical components will only cover the foundation. So your the first question that would come to your mind would be, how are we on what basis are we adding metadata if there is no content? Yeah, that is a good question, but then you'll have to see that you'll have to think that you have some basic information related to the feature, you have some basic information related to the topics that you might document, and you can add those as a start for the topics that you're documenting. Like metadata that you can add can include keywords, indexes, and short description. So as for what I was saying earlier, we can look at examples. Now let us look at the topics. In the topics, for all the topics, if you see metadata, first we are adding the index entries. Like if it's an overview for duplicate file finder, the index entries we have added is duplicate file finder and overview. Similarly, if it's for user interface elements of duplicate file finder, again duplicate file finder, user interface elements. Now same thing we have done for all the topics, and then we move on to metadata and keywords. Yes, we have replicated the same thing. It's good to add the same index, whatever you have added for indexes. It's a good practice to add the same thing as keywords as well, because they are basically the keywords that will be used to search for content on Google, or if you provide search functionality on your HTML output. So we've added the metadata, and finally we have replicated the topic title exactly as a short description. As I said, these are just filler values that you need to put at this stage, so that at least you have something even before the documentation of the content. As in when you add content, the way you've documented it, you can make changes to any of these, which include the short description, the keywords, or the index entries. You can populate them once you start adding the content. So we have now covered the classical, as per all classical components of the information architecture model. So let me look at that question again. Okay, so the question was, who prepares information architecture for any product? Is that just the PL and PM ahead, or any author is involved? As you said, it's before authoring. I'll answer this based on how I approached it. See, if you are going to before starting documentation for any product, you need to at the first stage, you need to have the skeletal structure ready for anything that you're going to document. You're just not going to start writing a feature immediately. You need to know what all are going to what all features are going to be documented for that release of the product. So you'll first have the skeletal structure ready. So that becomes your organization. Right at the very beginning, you're not going to get an exact title right. So then you're going to move on to labeling, and you'll get all those titles right. And as far as navigation and search is concerned, that is something navigation anyhow is needed, so that you're going to add as and when you document. Or as I said, the basic navigation parameters can be set up right at the beginning. Like if it is related links, and if you're going to document a feature as context, task, and reference, obviously concept, task, and reference, obviously the concept will have related links as the task and reference, and the same goes for the other three. So you know what the related links parameters are. And as I mentioned you in how to build the how to add prerequisites and post requisites, so you will know right at the beginning as to what are the basic links, what are the basic organization and the titles that you want. And finally, search metadata. Even before documenting, if you add the basic metadata, you can build on it as and when you are doing the documentation. So that was related to Arpita Sinha's question. Then there was one from Rahul. Is procedure result part of the navigation too? What exactly do you mean by procedure result? Is if you're documenting a procedure, then if you are using an example, see, are you is the question I mean, I want to know, are you documenting the result of a procedure separately, or within the procedure topic itself as an example? So that then it depends. If you are going to document it separately, then as I said, your organization, as in you can introduce any number of new topics for a particular feature, because if you create it in a proper way, it will be flexible enough to incorporate any new topics that you want to add over there. So yeah, if you want to document the procedure result separately, then it will have to be part of the navigation. Any other questions? Let me see. Who prepares? No, this is done.
Yeah, that's all we have as of now.
Yeah,
no
as of now, okay. Okay, it's just Kiranmai's question that is pending, and now that we are moving to contemporary or information architecture, I hope I can answer that question. Okay, so now the classical components of information architecture are completed, and we have seen that with the help of an example. Now we're going to look at something which is part of the information architecture once you start documenting it, or once you start adding content to your projects. This is a bit slow. Okay, so over here we'll deal with variables, image manipulation, conditionalizing, content reuse, and components. Okay, we'll look at each one of the components and we'll look at the examples for them as well. Okay, variables. Setting a value to a variable and using the variable as a placeholder instead of product name, labels, and feature names. So why is it that we use variables? We use variables because if you use a variable and then you use that as a placeholder wherever the content is added, it helps for modification very quick. Like if you're documenting a feature and all of a sudden you realize and when you move ahead in the sprint or when you move ahead in the development schedule, you realize that the name is going to change, and if you've documented in many places, then changing it would become very difficult. So having a variable based structure for things that you find might change, or at least for something like a product name or some key features that you feel is dicey at the beginning, that they are not decided whether to have which name to have and all. If you come across such scenarios, then I think variables will help you a lot. So as and when you're documenting, you can take calls as to which feature you would like to add variables to. So you will have to maintain a separate file which contains all the variables. Some ideal component, some ideal elements which can be suitable for variables are product name, labels, and feature names. So let's look at the example. So in this case, as earlier I had taken the example of the menu tools. Over here, let us look at the reports menu. I'll show you some 10 screenshots. Actually, one would be more than enough, but just to give you an idea, if you look at this, it says the reports menu says auto tune up over here, but in the title over here, it says auto tune up reports. Now let's assume you've documented the procedure saying that click reports, click reports, and arrow mark auto tune up, because the menu says auto tune up. But when they finally decide that they want to maintain consistency between the menu items over here and the title over here, and they want to change it. So in that case, having a variable would be very helpful rather than going into each and every topic and changing it. So just as an example, I'm going to show you the different screens where it's consistent, where the menu item is different and the title is different. So if you have a feature name wherein auto tune up, and if you have a possible, and if there is a possibility of a name change for that variable for that feature where it can change to auto tune up reports, then it's a good idea to have a variable and a name assigned to it, and then use this variable wherever whenever you are creating content or whenever you're documenting that. So what it will do is, in case the team decides that the name is going to change, you just have to go to that particular file having that variable and make the change, and the entire content and wherever it's being used, the changes will get affected. So this is one of the components of contemporary information architecture. So okay, I see something. Just a minute. There is. Yeah, Kiranmai, if you have that question, you can type before I move on to the next question. I mean, next component. Okay, I guess I'll move on to the next.
Just now I gave him the access to unmute. So
Okay.
I think he has to rejoin once again. So let's move to the next component. Once he comes online, he will take it.
Okay, fine. Okay. Just a minute. Okay, image manipulation. Image manipulation deals with various manipulations that can be achieved with images. So you can manipulate images based on the delivery of the output. Like this condition is basically specific to what kind of output that you're delivering. So there are certain kind of image manipulations that can work on PDF, and there are certain kind of image manipulations that do not work on PDFs. So why do we need these manipulations? Like, let's take an example of if you are delivering the same kind of content on PDF as well as HTML output, then you can't use large screens for PDF because then it will go out of boundary. So in that case, you have to put in a smaller sized screens. So what then happens is, if you have a smaller size screens because of PDF, then it doesn't look good on your HTML output. So because of that, we need to have different types of images for different types of outputs. And then you can use image maps for to make your documentation interactive, and then you can use animated GIFs also for your procedures to provide some value to your documentation. So let's look at the different types of image manipulations. So image size for PDF. So let's assume this is the kind of this is the image size that you've used for your PDF. But if when the same thing is added to your HTML help, it doesn't look that good and it doesn't look that visible as well. So it looks quite small. So then for basically for HTML output, you will need a larger sized image, but then you cannot use this large size image for PDFs because then it will go out of boundary. So these are some of the image manipulation techniques. And then example for image maps. So what is an image map? Image map is having a hyperlink within the image to move from one part of the document to another. So you can just use image maps and make them clickable. Now if you see on the left hand side, you'll see that these I have created hyperlinks for these image maps. So I have mapped each one, like traces cleanup. If I click on traces cleanup, it will go to that particular topic, or if I click duplicate file finder, it will go to that particular topic. So I have used image map technique to create hyperlinks based on the menus displayed in the image. So I'll just show one or two working, because if I show you auto tune up, I'll have to come back all the way to this particular page. So I'll just show you how it works. Let's look at service optimizer. See, it went to the topic where I had covered that service optimizer. And or else just let's look at restore. Okay, let's look at restore. If you look at this, when I click it, it will go to the topic where I had used restore reports. So you can use these kind of image maps as image manipulation techniques. And then finally, example for animated GIFs. Now I'll show you an animated GIF which can be used as an alternate for videos, and then I'll talk about the limitations and the benefits as well. So let's look at an animated GIF which will show you how to access the software's license information and support details and all that. So it's a quick, it will move quickly. So if you can't see it, I'll give it one more round. So let's move to that one. See, it's on about information, license details. It shows the license details. You close it. You can go back to support. You can see the support related details, close. And finally, when you close it, it goes back to dashboard. So now it's repeating. Okay. What would be the use case of using something like animated GIFs? Now the benefit would be, if you use an animated GIF for a particular procedure, then you can add that as an example within that particular topic. You can add that as an example and share the animated GIF. So what is the benefit is, a person reading a topic, a user reading the topic from your HTML output need not exit that or need not open another window and then refer to any videos that you have created. He can immediately see the animated version of that procedure within that topic. So that is one of the benefits. The drawbacks, those are quite a lot, but then yeah, the drawbacks are, see, you should know how to use JavaScript, or you should know manipulation techniques as to adding a play button or a pause button or a stop button, because that will not be done by your basic tools that create animated GIFs. So that is one of the drawbacks. The other drawback is, if you put it in an infinite loop, then you will never know which is the start and which is the end. You can do a workaround wherein you can add callouts and indicate that this is step 1, this is step 2. So with that, a person will get an idea, or a user will get an idea as to which one is the first step and which one is the other step or the next step. So you can, based on callouts, he'll get to know as to which step he's on. So those are some drawbacks. So yeah, but it's a great solution to have within your procedural topic within your HTML output itself. Yeah, the other drawback is it doesn't work within PDFs. So you can't add it to PDFs. What you can do is you can give them a link of your HTML help, which will again build traffic for that particular page of your HTML help. So yeah, there are a lot of drawbacks, but the benefits are also there because the user immediately gets to see it working within the procedural topic, and he does not have to go out of that page and search for a video for that particular procedure. Okay, moving ahead. Now we look at conditionalizing. So why do we need to conditionalize? We need to conditionalize because it reduces duplication of content. You do not have to create multiple versions of your content based on different format, different delivery formats, audience or platform. You can use the same set of, you can use the same topic and add conditions to that based on the requirement. And you can add those conditions for the written content as well as images as well as your TOCs. You can have customized TOCs for one set of output or and another one for a different set of outputs. So where will the conditionalizing help? Like as I had mentioned earlier, for the image size of PDFs. When I said this is a small image which is created for PDF and this is a large image for created for HTML, you can add both of those within your topic, and you can conditionalize by mapping one to PDF, giving the condition as one specific to PDF and one specific to HTML. So when you are generating an output, if you generate only PDF, then the smaller image will be the smaller image will appear in the PDF. And when you add when you generate an output for HTML, the same thing happens. The larger image will appear and the smaller one won't appear. Again, for conditionalizing of content, where will it be needed? Like if you are delivering documentation for a product which works on both Mac as well as Windows, if you want to mention press command option delete if it case of Mac, and the same thing on Windows if it is control alt delete, and if you are documenting this as a procedural step, for that particular step you have to document it twice, and for one you have to add the condition that it's specific for Mac, and for the other you have to add the condition that it's specific for Windows. Also the same thing as we saw for our animated GIF. Since I said animated GIF does not work on HTML on PDF output, for PDF when that example appears, you can see if you can give a condition saying that for to view the animated GIF or to view the example, you can visit you can give them the URL and build and make them click the URL and visit that page wherein they can see the animated GIF, because anyhow you can't add that animated GIF within your PDF. It will not work over there. Okay, so we are moving to content reuse, but I see a question. So let me see what the question is. Okay. Can we say conditionalization as optimization? No, optimization is adding the, I mean, see, optimization, you cannot say conditionalization as optimization, because you are giving a condition as to where it will be applicable. I mean, it's actually not optimized. You are just you are making it convenient for yourself to generate multiple outputs using the same source. So it's basically single sourcing and creating multiple outputs. Okay, do we have that question from Kiranmai?
Yeah, so sorry to disturb. I think she is online now.
Okay.
Kiran, are you there? Kiran, are you there?
Can you hear me, Bibhu?
Yeah, I can hear you, Kiran.
Yeah, actually, thank you, Mayur, for giving the opportunity to talk. It's just that I wanted to add something to Arpita's question, which he had about whether the authors can be involved or only the project managers and the leads will take it over for information architecture. Just brief thing which I wanted to answer. Is it okay for me to continue or?
Yes, go ahead. We have a lot of
Okay.
time. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Arpita, it's like this. Usually, what happens is if you're going to get the feature list or the product details from the project management office, which is actually taking care of the design aspect, and the rest of the development team also is involved. What you will be doing is you can break down information architecture into two parts. One is the high level design and the granular level. So the high level will have all the features which will be going for that particular release or patch release, and then the next part of it is where you will be involved in your granular. So you can decide on, the authors can be involved by the manager or the project lead to take over from there to actually give your consistent writing aspect, because you will be using the style guides and all and so on. The manager might only be thinking about information architecture at a high level and tell you that these are the features and these will be what we'll be looking at. So you can start preparing the document according to that. So after, it's not necessary that the manager will be designing the entire thing. It's impossible for him to do if he's going to have multiple features. Yeah, thank you, Mayu. That was what I wanted to add.
Okay, regarding content strategy, I actually don't know how to answer that, because see, content, I think it's pretty much the same.
Can I probably I can answer, but just tell me if it's right or wrong, because I'm not. I had a doubt once because I just wanted to. I think information is about how we do it, like how your I mean, what is going to happen in your product or project, how you do it, and this more is more about, as you said, content strategy is more, I think, about giving out the content in terms of governance and deliverable, is what I understood, but I might be wrong. That's the reason why I asked.
No, I mean, see, the thing is, whenever people talk about content strategy, they basically talk about delivering using the same source for multiple outputs for like mobile or tablets or
Correct.
yeah. So having different type of strategies for, I mean, like I said, GIF may not be applicable everywhere. So do you actually want to deliver it, create GIFs for mobile devices and all? I don't think so. There will be a strategy as to where it needs to go, or then again, when it comes to delivering for different devices, then you have to have a strategy of conditionalizing, because you need to use the same source and make sure that it's delivered for all kinds of output that you want to generate.
Correct.
So these, as
There
I said,
might, I think it might be a thin line, Mayur. There might be some overlapping, definitely, but there must be some other way of looking at both of them. Probably this is something offline which we can discuss. But then
yeah.
I wanted to ask this question because we can start thinking about how we can probably fuse these two to make it more presentable in this type of agile and data world.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Sri Hari also has a comment. Content strategy is what info should be presented.
Correct. What it
Yeah,
is. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So he has that comment. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. So finally, we move on to the last part, which is content reuse. Okay, there's one more comment as we have some time. Content strategies, or for example, user guide should not have the marketing content. Okay, so what Srihari has mentioned is content strategy is what info should be presented, and the example that is he has given is user guide should not have the marketing content. So basically, your content, everything is at a common place like a repository, but your user guide should basically have the information which is relevant to that, and not some marketing related content. Okay, so let's move on to the final component of our information architecture, which is content reuse, which is quite popular nowadays. So reuse basically eliminates the duplication of content and eliminates the need for updates in multiple places for reused content, and and the maintenance also becomes easier. So basically, when you're reusing something, it's either going to be content snippets which you have created separately, or common images which you want to reuse in different topics. So let's have a look at an example. Okay, let's look at strategies for content reuse. Create a shared topic or a content snippet and a document content snippet and document the reusable content element. Reference the reusable content from the topic where it needs to be displayed, and reuse reference should be of similar content type. So what it basically means is, if when it comes to Flare, the reuse happens through snippets. You can create small snippets of information and then reuse it in wherever you want. When it comes to us, the repository that I worked on, which is SDL Trisoft, over there you can create a shared folder and have all those snippets of information placed over there and reuse it wherever you want. So that is another way. And reuse reference should be of similar content types. So what basically it means over there is, you can refer a table to another table, but you cannot refer a table to some other paragraph. So the reuse parameters should be similar. Like if you're referring a section, like if you are going to reuse a section, you're you should create a blank section and reference that to the source. You cannot create a table and then reference that to a section. So the content types, the content delivery modes have, not the delivery modes, the content types have to be similar when you're reusing. You cannot reuse a table within a paragraph or add a paragraph within a table. So you have to use the same kind of components to do the reuse. So let's look at this example. In this case, when I said that each feature should have its own user interface elements, a topic for defining all its user interface elements, all the 10 menus that we are going to see, they have the same list of buttons. I'll just go through that, see if, I know it's very minute changes, but I'm moving through the menus and you can see that those list of buttons haven't changed. So which means we can reuse them. As and when we want for that particular UI elements topic. So the content would be like the details button, clear all, and close. So their action is mentioned over here. So you can create a topic and then reuse it for every menu item in that menu. And there are some additional buttons within it called previous, next, print, save as, and close. So even those will be the same throughout for all the menu items. So you can reuse that as well. So before moving on to components, now there will be a question like, why reuse this for every topic? If it's the same, then you can just create one topic wherein you can mention that these are the definitions of all of these will be the same throughout for all these menu items. So you can create one topic and you can give a related link. Yes, you can do that, but in the era of what do you say? In the era of limited search, as in, if a person is going to find a particular topic, he might as well get all the information in that topic. Like they say in data, or like they say in topic-based architecture, every page is page one. So if someone is looking out for your information, if someone is looking out for some information, and if he gets that information in that particular page, it is much better than again asking him to click somewhere and go there and then read that and come back over here. So that makes it much more beneficial to have it replicated. Anyhow, there is no duplication, it's just reuse of one particular source. So that is the advantage which I feel. There are workarounds. As I said, you can just create one topic and mention that these are the features which are common to all of these buttons or all of these user interface elements. So you can do that as well, but this is just an example for reuse which I wanted to show. Okay, now when it comes to reuse, before we go to components, there are two ways of doing reuse. One is, if you feel one of the 10 menu items are going to have the same content, then you can use one of the menu items, a topic from that, and you can add the main source over there, that is the main content over there, and then use reference, then use that as a reference to all the other topics. Like in this case, if I document auto tune up, if I document the user interface elements of auto tune up, In that topic, I can cover the documentation, I can cover the details of all these buttons, and then for all the other topics, I can reference the information that has been documented within AutoTune. Now that is one way to do it. The other way to do would be having your components. So what are components? Components are basically topic types or content components are basically in components which hold a certain kind of information. Like if I want to have a content component which has description of all these buttons in that particular component, and then reuse wherever my source has wherever the source topic has called. So I can do that. I can have a content component. I mean, I can have a table component. I can have an image component, and then I can have components like error messages. Like I can create one component wherein I document all the error messages or all the warnings or all any kind of disclaimers or important message or notes, any kind of things. So I can document all of that in one component and call them in the source topic wherever it's required. Like there are certain note messages which are common throughout multiple features. So why keep adding those notes again and again? Or why add it to one particular topic and reference it in different topics? Instead, create a component and add all the information, all type of notes over there, and then reference it on the source topic. So that is called component based architecture, wherein you can have components. There are certain documentation techniques wherein they have components or procedures also, wherein they have all the types of procedures written within that, and those are referenced in the source topic, because they don't want the source topic to be modifiable. They want the source topic to be to reference certain components. So this is all about components. As I said, instead of doing it, instead of referring it to a particular topic, you can refer it to a component and then get these content, reuse the content from within those components. Okay, so we've actually through with both classical and the contemporary part. So I guess we are done. So if anyone has any questions, I think Bibhu, you can unmute everyone. Okay, please give. There is one question. Please give some examples of component. I think I just did. It is having one component called error messages, or one component called what do you call messages, wherein you can add all kinds of messages within it, like notes. You can add warnings. You can add important information, something which can be replicated into different topics. Like what example can I give? If you have an error message which is common for 3 to 4 features, you can have that error message documented within a component called error messages or notes or something. Within that, you can have everything and reuse it wherever, in whichever feature you want. So that is one kind of component that you have. Or as I showed you in this example, instead of having this documented with a particular feature, I'll create a component called UI elements and have these tables documented. Just a minute, it's not moving. Okay. Somehow it's not moving. Okay. As I said, now this particular information, this table which has the button name and action, so all the entire table can be documented within a component called UI, user interface elements. So you can create a component called like that and have this documented within that component and this table as well. And wherever you want to use these tables, and if you are going to use it in multiple places, then you can just give a link to the component and this particular table and reuse. How different is component from reuse is, in components you need to add most of the information within the content, and your source file will have no modifiable information. Everything within your source file of that topic will link to a component. So that is the component based architecture. What's the difference between content reuse and components? As I said, okay, I'll give you example. I think just a minute. I'll show you an example itself. The thing is, when I move to comments, it becomes very difficult to go back. Okay. Now, let's assume I am documenting auto tune up. I am documenting a topic called user interface elements of auto tune up. And within this topic, I will document all the user interface elements, which include these buttons as well. Okay, I do this. Now, when I move to disk cleanup, I will just refer I will have to again document this, but instead of documenting this, I'll just give a reference to auto tune up. Okay, the same goes for registry, traces, scheduler. So this is content reuse, wherein you have added your information to the auto tune up topic and you have reused it for all of this. So basically what happened, this is just a very simple example. So what will happen is you have added this to the topic itself. The topic is modifiable, so if anyone modifies it, it will impact all of this. Okay, so the same is in components as well. But in components, instead of documenting it within auto tune up, you create a component of user interface elements, and even within auto tune up, for documenting these user interface elements, you link it to a component where it has been documented, and that goes for all these 10 menu items. So you create components for those user interface elements, a component called user interface elements, and you document everything over there, and you just call it from auto tune up. So what that does is your source file which generates the output is always protected, and your component is never part of the publication which you're going to generate an output from. So all these components are external, and the external one is passing information to the topic which is part of your publication or which is part of your map. So that becomes non-modifiable. Okay, there are some more. Let us take questions. Okay, one of the rules of Agile is to have minimal design. How does IA? Okay, one of the rules of Agile is to have minimal design documents. How does IA fit in the Agile world? Minimal design documents. Okay, but that's the thing, right? If you are in Agile, you will basically not have any design documents or functional specs. So most of the times, the people who use functional specs within Agile are actually not following the true nature of Agile. You should have user stories which should define what that particular story is supposed to do, and you look at it whether it has doc impact. So information architecture will anyhow fit in irrespective of what process you follow, whether it's agile or a waterfall. For example, let's assume one of the story is about auto tune up. So one story, I don't think an entire feature would be a story. I think that would become an epic. But anyway, just for discussion's sake, let's assume auto tune up reports is a story, and it is defined what auto tune up reports is supposed to do. Now, even in Agile, you need to have some UI mockups. Maybe you don't have functional specifications, but you need to have UI mockups, and you need to have the story description provided over there. So you can use those two, and you can use your documentation structure wherein you've decided right at the beginning that for any feature that I document, I'm going to add one topic which will cover the concept, one topic which will cover the user interface elements, and one topic on how to or the procedure part of that feature. So if you have that structure ready with you, if you have decided that that's how you're going to deliver, so I think irrespective of what process you follow, whether agile or waterfall, you will anyhow end up with the information architecture will always fit in irrespective of what kind of process that you're following, as long as your documentation delivers whatever is required for that particular feature or for that particular story. Also adding to it, when you have extremely tight deadlines, how do you scope it? Okay. See, it might look very huge the way it has been, the way you see it over here, but come to come to think of it, let's take a smaller menu. Like, let's assume, as I as I showed you in the classical information architecture, there were only 4 menus. See, getting if you are starting from scratch, getting your organization, getting your labeling, and search, and the final one was navigation. Getting these things structured will not take you more than a day or two, and I don't think you can come up with a sprint wherein it has, or come up with an entire release cycle which has hundreds and 200s of feature, because then your sprints will run into, I mean, I don't know. It might run into many things. Even with tight deadlines, you have to have a skeletal structure. Now, if it is done already for you, okay. If you look at it from this perspective, like if this skeletal structure is already done for you, then you'll have to only follow how it has been structured earlier. You cannot introduce your own structure to it. The max you can do is have the labeling proper, have your navigation proper, and add metadata just to add value. That's the only things that you can do, because you cannot add anything to a structure which has already been created if it did not follow IA. So you cannot just start with a new set of features and add IA to it saying, no, because IA says this is how we are supposed to do, I'm going to do it for these new features. No, then it will break the consistency. If it has been done properly right at the beginning, then I think you can actually add all of these things. And another thing, the first 4, that is the classical aspect of IA, is the only mandatory part, because it is basically giving you a foundation for efficient documentation. All the others, like when it comes to contemporary, this one, all the other image maps and all, you need to decide whether you want to give it or not, whether you want to deliver it or not. Now if it's a value add, and whenever you think of value add versus tight deadlines, you will always opt for tight deadlines. So reuse, other things like content reuse, components, and all those things, if you have the flexibility to do it, you can go ahead and do it. But if you have tight deadlines, then you have to take a call as to whether you want to do it or not. The first part is mandatory. The first part is like the foundation. Without foundation, you cannot have a building. So without foundation, and it's like having your in DDLC, having your structure ready. So you will definitely not start writing a feature immediately. You will need to know what all you are documenting and what all you need to deliver. So when you know what all you are going to document, the first thing that you're going to do is, how am I going to give a title, where is it going to link to, and what kind of keywords can I add. So this is the basic. So the first part is mandatory. The second part, which is more of a value add, is up to you and what all you can deliver. Like if your company is not following animated GIFs and all, you might as well don't do it. No, that's up to you. Any other questions you can post? Or if there are no questions.
Any more questions from participants? Mayur, let's wait for some time. There are some questions.
Yeah. How does one transition to this role? The easiest answer would be experience. I don't think implementation of information architecture would be something that a person with 0 to 3 years of experience will be able to do. I don't think that would be possible. At that stage, it is something that you have to learn, and you need to be mentored by someone who knows how to do it. See, we just use a fancy name like information architecture, but it's basically what everyone is doing. It's just that I wouldn't say you're not aware of it. It's just that that's how you actually work. If you look at it, just think of it this way: even before you document, you have your skeletal structure ready, and even before you start writing the content, you will have a topic title ready. And once, while you're writing, you will need to know where it's going to link, if there is some hyperlinks that you need to add and all. So you are aware of these things. It's just that these things have been documented and they call it information architecture. Yeah, search is one aspect wherein adding indexes, adding keywords, adding metadata, this might be the one thing that you might not be aware of. Like, many people skip on short description, skip adding keywords, or skip adding metadata. So that impacts the searchability of your product once it goes online. Other than that, most of it is something that you're already doing. Okay, there's one more question. Every sprint will have critical mass, so scope changes and time will be buffered in adding to what Mayur said. Yeah, that's the thing with sprint. Even with sprint, like, if you have to achieve something within a particular sprint, let's take an example of a sprint of 3 weeks. In a sprint of 3 weeks, I don't think you'll be documenting a lot many features, because it has to be developed, it has to be tested, and all these things also should happen. So there is limited things happening within a sprint. So if there are 4 to 5 features, I think the first four stages of information architecture is going to be done within the first 2 days, as long as you have all the information in the beginning of the sprint. The sprint scoping, the sprint planning, which happens before the start of the sprint, as to what has to be the scoping which happens before the start of the sprint, at that stage you will get all the information that you need, as far as the structure, as far as what all will be covered within that sprint. So you'll have to use that information and build your foundation. Of course, documenting is a totally different thing. Is it good to have different types of information like install config, usage, troubleshooting in one project? Or is it good practice to split them in different projects? Okay, install config. This depends on... Okay, just one question to Sangeeta. Do you want me to answer this based on Agile or based on waterfall? Because based on waterfall, there will be a totally different answer to it. The reason being, in Agile, there might be multiple guides that you are documenting at the same time. So depending on what all has been added to your sprint. Now in waterfall, you have the flexibility to wait for a long time to get all the information that you need, and you can spend time working on one guide at a time. So, okay, based on Agile. Okay, based on Agile, again, it depends. Now, if there is a doc impact, see, my examples were based on a user guide perspective. So yeah, you have a genuine question as to how to document these kind of guides. Yeah, good. When it comes to installation, you cannot follow this kind of structure. Reason being, you have to have your own, you have to have a standard set of installation details and a standard set of troubleshooting details within that guide if you're doing. See, from the perspective of installation and administration, I don't think this will fit well, because you can't do concept task and...
Mayur, can I answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mine?
Yeah, no problem, go ahead.
So to answer that, Sangeeta, it is like this. If you're looking at an agile environment, as Mayur said, you might not be, for one sprint, you might not be touching on troubleshooting at all, or there might be multiple authors for you in your agile environment. So somebody else is doing the troubleshooting. So information architecture can also be set in there, because troubleshooting is more customer focused, and you'll have to actually anticipate some of the questions which they ask, or you're actually giving them some sort of a frequently asked questions. So that in each project, so it depends on the type of documentation suite which you will be giving to the client or the customer which they're asking for. So you're stitching actually at the build stage, you'll be stitching the documents together. So it depends. So in Agile, we'll have multiple documents across products, and some of them will be just taken from there and you'll be stitching it up. So yes, we will have install, config, and usage, and also the the troubleshooting, and you will also be having the scope for that. So for each sprint, you will have that you will be touching on a few troubleshooting because somebody has asked for it immediately, and they have to go, especially if it's going to be field diagnostics. Field diagnostics will have the troubleshooting guide as a priority. And if it's going to be the end user, the user guide will have priority. So it depends upon your user experience and also the type of people who are going to be your audience. So yes, you can do it. Information architecture can also work on all the documents which you're going to prepare, provided you know which will be flexible and which will sort of be standard or will be the same static. So I usually we classify it as static documents and dynamic. So dynamic documents are what you're talking about, which keep changing according to the usage, and static is something like user guide and some other typical system administration guide, which are going to be something which you will be sending it as a documentation suite. So you might not be doing all of them the same way. You might be writing chapter 1 of user guide for the sprint, and you might be writing troubleshooting only the particular feature of it, and so on. So does that answer your question? Thank you.
Any more questions?
Any questions? I think there's no questions.
Okay. So thank you all. In case if you want to reach out to me, I'll just type in my email address. I forgot to add that slide. So did it go only to
me?
Yeah. Okay, just a minute. I'll make it all panelists and attendees. Just a minute, guys. I'll just type my email address. You can send your email to me, and if I have an answer, I'll definitely answer your questions.
And though I will be sharing the recording with all the participants, would you like to also share your PPT with them?
Yeah, I'll share. I'll share it by the end of day today, or maybe tomorrow. I'll send it across to you.
Right. All right, sure. So thanks a lot. Thank you so much, Mayur. It was really very informative. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your valuable time and effort.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to all the participants. And I once again apologize as we postponed it because of some issues. Let me know if anyone of you would like to present something. Also, please give your feedback. You can write to me. You can also call me anytime, and please give your feedback. How can we make it even better for you? Let us know what all sessions or topics would you like us to come up with. We will definitely work on that. Thanks all the admin council. I can see Kiran and Nibu being online. Thanks, Kiran, for all the help and support. Last, I also, again, I would like to repeat, thanks TechnoRights. TechnoRights has been the sponsor for this webinar platform for a long time now. And this time again, they are going to sponsor for all the webinars. Thanks a lot, TechnoRights. Stay tuned for the next webinar. We are already off for that. Thank you so much, and we can wind it off here.
Okay. Bye all.
Bye-bye.